I mean, secure attachment doesn't really like get the likes and views, though. It's way more interesting to be problematic. Welcome to Let's Pick This Up Next Week. I'm Dee.
And I'm DJ. We're two therapists who like to dive deep into everything from mental health to politics, voting, and whatever else is going on in the world.
We're here to have real conversations about life, the issues that matter, and how it all affects us. Because let's face it, there's always something more to talk about.
Exactly. So grab your coffee, settle in, and join us as we break it all down.
We'll catch you up on the big stuff, the personal stuff, and the things you didn't even know that you needed to think about.
And when we run out of time,
we'll pick this up next week. Do you think we've become too attached to labels? We're talking attachment today.
We are talking attachment. I hesitate to answer that question because it's very, very personal, I think. Like some people are so anti-labels and like, why do we have to use them? And some people, like this guy, I love labels because it gives you a sense of understanding. I think it helps people have a language that like makes sense if like you can label something and you just know what it means with that label. But conversely, sometimes you might have labels and people have completely different definitions for what that label means. And so it could be also confusing. So I'm going to say it depends.
It sounds like you're pretty securely attached to the idea of labels and attachment. And
yes,
that's what we're talking about today.
All right.
Let's talk about attachment theory. So I see all of the time stuff about like my attachment style. I do want to put like a 2-second caveat out there to our listeners. We're going to be talking about like attachment styles. I think it's really important that we don't disorder them by calling them attachment disorders, because there is actually such as things like reactive attachment disorder, which is a childhood disorder I am not qualified to diagnose. I don't work with children. So it is not an attachment disorder to talk about attachment styles, things like anxious attachment, avoidant, secure, disorganized. Those are what we're going to be talking about today.
From the great attachment theory, which is one of my favorites. It's funny that you mentioned reactive, what's it called? Reactive
attachment disorder.
So I've been watching the Great American Family, Good American Family, Something American Family, Something Family. It's on Hulu. And Meredith Grey or Ellen Pompeo, whatever her name is the starring one of the starring characters. But it's the story about Natalia Grace. Do you know who that is?
You've said so many words that make me feel like I'm so far out of the zeitgeist. So
yes. So Natalia Grace now she's in her adulthood years, but she was adopted from Ukraine, I'm going to say, but I could be wrong.
You can make up whatever.
But other people are going to know because she's been in the news.
Just comment and say if DJ's wrong.
She was adopted when she was like 7 years old. And during the time, this was her second adoption. The first adoption, she already was like, the family was like, we can't have her. So she's adopted again. But by this couple who have 3 other kids. Anyway, they suspect, or at least they say, that they think she's an adult. She can't possibly be 7 years old. And so after she lived with them for 2 years, they had her declared like a 20-something-year-old woman, and that she went to go live in an apartment by herself. It was come to find out she actually was only like 9 years old when they put her in an apartment by herself. Luckily, like some neighbors like, hey, we think she's struggling, and had taken her in. But one of the things that while she was living with the couple that pretty much abandoned her when she was 9 was that they said that she had reactive attachment disorder. And it was, she would have get angry when things didn't go her way, or like she didn't know when to trust, that a family cared for her, anyone could care for her, and she had big outbursts. So that was something that they talked about. And the therapist, and I don't know if this really happened, but the therapist in the movie suggested that what the parents do is like re-baby her, like treat her basically like she was an infant.
Yeah.
And feeding her, and like because she didn't get that attachment when she was a baby, and so that they should try to do it, which of course in the show, and I don't know if this happened, and I've watched the documentaries, but I don't know if this happened. Like, of course she was like, I'm not a baby, like you're not doing this crap with me. But anyway, that's the
It's what
difference between
9-year-old wants that, like,
right. So that's the thing, with like attachment disorders, we can see, but they're based on the fact that, a secure attachment did not get to happen when it should, which the first attachment the first attachment style that we have, we can do work and do some changes. Usually like in adulthood is when you're like changing. You can like in teenager years, but your first attachment style comes to be between the ages of 0 and 2, which is when you have no choice really on how you're developing that attachment, right? Because you don't have the cognitive ability to be like, this is what I need to do to develop a secure attachment. It is 100% based on how well your parents respond to needs.
absolutely. Why, for some reason, does the name escape me of like, I literally teach lifespan development. So
Yeah.
this is really embarrassing to me that I cannot remember. Always paired with Vygotsky for stages. Oh my God, who is it?
The stages of development.
Yes.
Erickson.
Thank you,
Oh
Eric
my God, I always
Erickson.
talk about Eric. I love him too. I always talk about Eric Erickson's psychosocial stages of development.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
Eric Erickson talks about at different ages, we have to learn different things. And we're, between trust and mistrust and trust and things like that. And
Identity and confusion.
yes. And then as we age, get more towards what's the second to last one? Gerontivity versus, I can't remember. It's like I should research this
Right.
or know this.
It's not, I mean, basically, like that stage is like, what's the legacy that you're leaving behind?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're constantly going through these phases of life and these changes. But yeah, a lot of times our first initial attachment comes from our parents because
Yeah.
that's who's there during these early stages. And there was this really, really cool study, I think at least, that really started the understanding of attachment styles and attachment theory. And I know you know, DJ,
Mm.
is the strange situation research study that was done by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth. Love them, like 10 out of 10. What the strange situation research was based on is basically they had this like toddler that came to the study with their mom because it's always the moms.
Mm-hmm.
This was the 60s, I think, but
Yeah,
still.
I think so. Yeah.
But anyway, mom brought toddler into this playroom and then, sat there for a couple minutes while the toddler played and then got up and left the room. A stranger came into the room, attempted to play with the child, and then mom came back. I'm fuzzy on some of the details, but essentially, how the child then reacted to mom returning showed that a child's attachment style. So the ones that freaked out when mom left, meltdown, right?
Right.
Those are anxiously attached individuals. They need that reassurance, that connection, and they weren't getting that. These toddlers weren't getting that from mom because mom left the room. Even when the stranger was there, that baby could not calm down, right?
Right.
There is avoidant, who are these the kids when mom came back in, they shunned mom. They did not respond to mom. They did not go to her for comfort. They did not anything. It was just like completely detached from mom. Um, and then there was ones that are what's called a secure attachment. And so they are ones who kind of use mom like a home base. Like, yeah, I was kind of curious when mom left, but was okay playing and going on without her. And when she came back, wasn't glued to her, but, was home base, was safe enough to go back and interact with her and just went on like normal. So they found these three attachment styles. And then later, research added disorganized as a style, which basically just means you got a mix of them. So,
Mm-hmm.
so in short, that is where attachment theory came from.
Yes. Yeah, it's great. And I was thinking too, like we can see those attachment styles. I mean, not just in like humans, but like anybody who has a dog, can see like, dogs who have anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or secure attachment, right? Like, sometimes my dog will feel super, super, anxious. And if he thinks I'm even might leave somewhere, like he's like, following me, right? So like people, a lot of, you see like separation anxiety that can happen in people also happen in like dogs. So like attachment styles, aren't even just unique to humans. Like we see them in animals as well. It's interesting because I was talking about disorganized attachment. I think in like attachment theory is like one of my jams. So like I use it a lot in my therapy. And I was talking about it, disorganized attachment in one of my sessions the other day. And we talked about pop psychology and how people often call like disorganized attachment anxious avoidant, as if that's like attachment style. And disorganized attachment is like deeper than that, but also, that push-pull dynamic can happen. And I think that's why, it gets that misnomer. But disorganized attachment, we talked about attachment disorders, but also personality disorders. And disorganized attachment can often lead to borderline personality disorder in adulthood, which is something that impacts like romantic relationships or any friendship
Sure.
relationships, work relationships, all that kind of stuff. Because someone with disorganized attachment, like the baby, the 0 to 2 year old who's forming that attachment style doesn't know what to expect from their parents. And so like that will lead all the way through their life where they're not sure, what to expect from a person. And so they may push or pull.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a good point. People with BPD often, a lot of times, have more of that anxious to disorganized. Sometimes I've had people tell me that they're avoidant, but they're not. They're just anxious in a different
Right.
way.
Right.
Because a lot of times people, let's break them down a little more, but I want to just kind of caveat too that these aren't just in romantic relationships. I
Right.
think I default to using romantic relationships a
Uh-huh.
lot because that's when a lot of people come to me with
And a
issues.
lot of the books
They're
do
not
too.
often, yeah, they're not often saying, I need this reassurance from my boss or
Right.
whatever. We call that anxiety. We don't call that one
Right.
attachment, but it's to any human and non-human, I suppose, right? I would argue that my sister has anxious attachment with her dog, but like that is a whole different, I'm just kidding. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I'm not kidding, but
Uh-huh.
it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Her dog's cute at least, so
And people, you can see that with people. I mean, people who
for
are out
sure.
for a little bit and then they're like, oh my God, I have to get back home to my dog. They've been alone for 45 minutes or something like that, right? You can see it.
Sure. But a lot of people will say something to me like, I'm avoidant attachment.
Uh-huh.
And they'll say things like, well, if someone annoys me, I just like write them off.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, then what happens? And eventually they go right back around to that. And I'm like, so you responded out of anxiety
Right.
to cut that person off, but then brought them back in some way. Like
Right.
that's anxious
Right.
attachment. That's not avoidant.
Right. Right. Yeah. The push-pull can come from that as well.
Yeah.
Something that I point out too is that disorganized attachment doesn't mean that you will grow up and have borderline personality disorder.
Yes.
You could have like traits that maybe, look like could be something similar, but you don't have to develop into like full blown personality disorder. But someone with borderline personality disorder will have a disorganized attachment. So one disorganized attachment on its own doesn't indicate that, but that is the attachment
Exactly.
style for that personality disorder.
All thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, DJ, can you give us examples of what someone with a secure attachment style would look like in relationships or work or friendships?
Mhm. It's interesting because that's something I always say too. Like, people that I do therapy with, right, usually don't have a secure attachment. And I always say, like, I'm sure those people exist out there somewhere. They're not coming to therapy. And maybe they do. Maybe they're doing like solution focused therapy or maybe, because I mean, you and I work a lot in like substance abuse and trauma, and those things usually don't come a lot with secure attachment. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Do you think
I
so?
do love, no, I love brief therapy. You just made me realize how much I miss brief
Oh,
therapy.
yeah.
It's so
Hmm.
fun. We should do an episode talking about
Oh, yeah, we
amazing
should talk
techniques of
about
brief
that one.
therapy that you
Yeah.
can do on yourself. It's just like,
Yeah.
you can totally
I
do that on
I
yourself.
had a whole program trying to go at my job to fill in like for cancellations that we would do like brief therapy for people. But most of the people that were referred were not candidates for brief therapy. So it has to be someone who can do problem solving. But so someone who is securely attached, right? They feel comfortable with themselves. They feel confident, which is not the same as arrogant, because that's probably going to signify something different than a secure attachment. But
It's like,
confident,
it's self-assured.
right,
Yeah.
right, self-assured, somebody who knows that they don't need a relationship, romantic relationship, but feels like a relationship would like, be nice to have. It will kind of augment their life, not like be their life. Somebody who can have a good communication, who can, listen to somebody's needs and wants and not feel like that's a threat to them, So there's a lot of things that a securely attached person would have that like, would lead to a more healthy relationship, friendship in the workplace and whatever. So that person was again like someone who was a baby that like when they needed their diaper changed, their parent was there. When they needed food, their parent was there. When they needed nurture, when they were sick, their parent was there. Like in the times, but also wasn't there like too much, not like hovering
Not
over them,
helicopter.
like,
Yeah.
right, like helicoptering. So it was a healthy balance of like having their needs met, but also like maybe being able to like learn how to sleep on their own and like, potty train and these kinds of things. So, you also would see someone who met like those kinds of typical kind of
The developmental
events that we would think
milestones
like
and
in development. Yeah.
yeah, somebody who's like that secure, they learned independence and
Hmm.
not dependence,
Right.
but also that people can be trusted and you can rely on people.
Right.
And yeah, I
Yeah.
wonder what percentage of population that is. I feel like
I looked it up
you
to
did.
be honest. Yeah, because I was curious and it was I want to say like more than 50%, like 55%. That was I was like that doesn't seem right. But that's what I
You'll
said like
find
again like it's
none
like
of those
what we
people
do.
on Tinder.
What's that?
You'll find none of those people on
Yeah,
Tinder. Just
right?
saying.
And that's the thing, right? They're probably not. They probably meet people in the produce section at the grocery store because they feel assured and can just go up and do that, right? And they're not, like I said, they're not coming to therapy. I can't tell you like a person I've done therapy with that I would say was securely attached, and that was their attachment style from childhood. And you can be someone who has an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment or a disorganized attachment and learn how to be securely attached, but it definitely takes work.
It does. Like I am 100% a recovering anxious attachment person. And so, but I think that I've gotten to a point where I'm secure, I would say like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done the work. It sucks. I don't like doing the work, but
The work is hard, and I think like you don't know too, like to do the work to have a secure attachment. The best time to do it is like when you're not in a super intimate relationship or romantic relationship, but you can do all of that work and be like, okay, I'm set, secure, 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 and get into a relationship and have all the things triggered that you thought that you had worked on,
yep,
because like you might not know until you're in the relationship.
exactly. So while we're talking about it, anxious attachment, what are signs that somebody is anxiously attached?
Oh, here's the hallmark sign of an anxious attached person. So let's say it can be like friends, romantic person that you're dating, like whomever. So an anxiously attached person will send a text message, right? And then like after they send that text message, they're like watching their phone, they get an answer back. It's been like, 20 minutes and they're like dying because they haven't got an answer back, right? Like, does the
Then
person
give the
like,
double text
right? Does
and
the person like me? Or like, what do you think I should do? Asking their friends, or an anxiously attached person may be distrusting. So not from a place that is meant to be like malicious, but just like how could this person really like me? What maybe, they're probably out there trying to find somebody better than me. So if you don't hear they would imagine like all of these scenarios that the person is doing, they're probably going to break up with me anyway, so an anxiously attached person and friendships. Do my friends really like me? They're probably only hanging out with me because they feel sorry for me. Those kinds of things are indicators of an anxious attachment.
I definitely had today, actually, I was on the phone with a colleague, and he's older than me, but we're peers in a lot of ways. And we kind of call out the differences between us, and that, I'm still like young in the profession, yada, yada. Anyway, so I did something new, and I was like, Doug, can you check your email and can you tell me I did a good job?
Mhm.
And Doug's like, I'll look at it. And then he's like, you did a good job. So I'm like,
Mhm.
thanks, Doug. Like, I needed that. I needed that reassurance, which is a sign of that more anxious type attachment that is like needed that. And it doesn't mean I was going to spend my whole day being like, meltdown, right?
Mhm.
But I needed that extra assurance that, isn't as apparent when you're more securely attached,
Right.
even in the workplace.
Yes, and that's what I was gonna say, like, you see it even shows up. It shows up everywhere, it doesn't just show up in your friendships or in your dating relationships. I mean, it can show up at work, right? Or if your boss is like, "Hey, D, at the end of the day, can you come see me?" And all day long, you're worried that like, "Oh, shit, I'm gonna be fired." But, like, I mean, that's the thing. So, I mean, and that can show up too, like, at work with imposter syndrome. That will happen a lot where, like, you believe with imposter syndrome with all of your heart that if someone really saw you and saw, like, how you don't know how to do your job and you don't know any of this stuff anyway, and any minute you're gonna get discovered because, like, there's no way that you, like, really are here, like, doing your job and stuff. That reminded me of the first day we did a practicum. It felt like we had thrown in there so early at like second semester of grad
We
school,
didn't. Yeah.
right? And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they're letting us go talk to real people and like do this stuff. I don't feel at all like I'm ready for this.
I see attachment styles in
Mhm.
therapists. It's fascinating you bring it up because you've obviously like supervised or like,
Mhm.
you have a PhD in counselor education.
Yeah.
I've had counselor interns called counseling trainees in Ohio. And I love not diagnosing my
Mhm.
CTs, but seeing like the ones who cannot sit in silence. And I even see it on like when you're bringing a client back from the waiting room, like from the lobby to the
Mhm.
office, if a person can't just walk in silence, and I'm not saying you
Right.
have to be silent, but I see sometimes, new therapists saying like, oh yeah, like, you can feel their anxiety going back because it's just
Mhm.
uncomfortable to be silent. Or like, you know, people that are more seasoned, more secure will just either start up a casual conversation or
Mhm.
they're okay in the 30-second walk down to an office and getting settled in before,
Mhm.
starting. So it's,
Right.
we as
Right.
therapists have these neuroses as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, the expectation that a therapist has like all their shit together all the time is definitely not real because we're also humans as well.
I finally watched it. I already forgot the name of it. Why am I forgetting everything today? The show on Apple TV that you kept telling me to watch.
Shrink,
Shrinking.
shrink. Is it shrinking? Yeah.
Shrinking.
Okay.
Finally watched it.
Yeah. Did
It
you
was
watch
great.
all of it or like a couple
I
episodes?
did.
Yeah.
I was crying at the end of season two for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But anywho,
Um. Yeah. That guy. Holy crap! Like, I mean, the ethical, like, pure breakdown
oh yeah,
that he has, like,
for
really,
sure.
really clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's an anxious
Anywho.
guy, but
Yeah.
just had some loss in that show. I don't want to give the whole thing away.
It's not a spoiler alert. It's the first episode you
Is it?
learn that his wife died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoiler.
Yeah. He needed to take some more time off, and he did not.
He did not.
But yeah,
Anywho.
we should have our shit together more than that. That's for sure. But uh a lot of therapists may, not have a secure attachment. It's not required to be a therapist as long as you are able
That's
to
true.
have like a healthy therapeutic relationship with the people you're working with.
Yeah. We can hold space regardless of our
Yeah.
attachment. It is difficult when, like, if you have more of that, like, preoccupied or anxious type attachment, like, wanting to swoop in. And
Mhm.
I would notice it in myself too when I would, like, ask a question
Mhm.
and then I would keep asking the question and just never shut up because I just wanted to
Mhm.
make sure that the person understood what I was trying to say. And I would just keep going and going and
Yeah.
going. And it's like, Dee, just shut up. Just ask your question. If the person doesn't understand, they'll tell you.
Right. Another thing, and I heard an example of, and I can't remember if it was an intern that someone was telling me the story about, but I think it was a client who I went to a different therapist and then was like seeing me and told me that they had a therapist once who like they did the session, and then at the end of the session, the therapist said, "Did I do okay? How was that for
How was
you?"
that for you?
And that's definitely not what a therapist should do, right? Mhm.
No.
Yeah.
If you're, no.
And that's
What a therapist
someone who has
says
some
is
anxious
for sure.
attachment, anxious everything. Mhm.
It's one thing as a therapist to check in to say,
Yeah,
like, was today's session what you were looking for?
right.
Did you get what you needed out of today?
Yeah.
But did I do a good
I
job?
do okay?
That's me on the phone with Doug at 8 a.m. It's like, did I do a good job? Tell me I did a good
Yeah,
job. Yeah.
yeah. So like, I mean, these things transcend your life. Your attachment style will follow you into a lot of different places.
Yes. So, what about the flip side of that anxious coin? Let's talk about dismissive or avoidant type.
Avoidant. Uh-huh. Yeah, so like avoidant is definitely like the flip side of the opposites. Somebody who, and like seeing like where I think like to the core it comes from a similar place. It's just instead of like being the chaser, who's someone who's anxious attached, you're the person who's constantly keeping people at arm's length. I don't need anybody. I don't want anybody. Anybody who tries to get close, like you're not like I don't want to date you. I'm never going to be in a relationship, hang out like, a few times and then move on to like the next person and never really be vulnerable or, show up in any way at all. Like
Any
they're
meaningful way.
gonna,
Yeah.
yeah, just very standoffish, keeping people at an arm's length and, being afraid of a connection.
Yes. And for some reason, there's a weird magnetism
Mm-hmm.
between anxious and
Mm-hmm.
avoidant people.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just like,
Yeah.
because they both feed into one another.
And
So I'm
it
going to
does.
talk.
I mean, somebody who's anxiously attached, right, feels like, and a lot of times there's abandonment issues that are to the
Mhm.
core too. So somebody who is anxiously
On both
attached,
sides.
right? Yes.
Yeah.
Someone who is anxiously attached is going to, like, if I can just get that person to love me, then that's going to mean that I'm worthy of love. So that's where that chase will happen because, like, that's the thing that they feel like is going to be the answer to everything. If this
Yep.
person loves me, I'm lovable.
And at the same time, that dismissive or avoidant attachment loves the anxiously attached because they keep coming back. So it starts to disprove their theory, but they also love it of like, I don't need anybody, but this person just keeps coming back and it's that like hit of dopamine. And then it's like, okay, cool. Keep them at arm's length. So they
Uh-huh.
feed off each other in these
Yeah.
very, very unhealthy
Oh,
ways. Now,
yeah.
that's not to say that couple can't work on it,
Uh-huh.
but
Uh-huh.
you're going to constantly hit the button on
Right.
someone else's stuff when you're
Right.
a mix between an anxious attachment
Uh-huh.
person and a dismissive
Uh-huh.
or avoidant attachment person.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And I think you said a key thing there too, is that like just because you're not securely attached or you don't have a secure attachment doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be in a relationship. But it is good to like be aware of how you're showing up in a relationship and being able to recognize what you need to work on and be willing to work on that stuff if you want a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Which is
Or
ideal, I think,
yeah,
for
it
some
is.
people.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some
A
people,
lot of people with trauma like don't even know what a healthy relationship looks like. So they may
yeah,
not even know. It just might be like what they've always seen because like right if they have an anxious attachment or an avoidant attachment that means that like they that came from their parents, right? So they didn't grow up with healthy secure attachments and healthy secure relationships.
yep. One of the like biggest thinking again about that avoidant person is like saying like, I'm just not good at feelings.
Right.
Or like, oh, let's not just like complicate it. I don't want the labels or whatever because
Uh-huh.
it's keeping things to that level is protecting them. Like they withdraw from social situations. They fervently want independence,
Uh-huh.
but they struggle with that vulnerability. But ultimately, like that person's hurting too. It's not this person's not truly like aloof and happy
Right.
with it. There's
Right.
a desire for relationships, but not being able to access that. Yep. I once had an avoidant ex who didn't let me follow him on Instagram because he thought that that would be
Too
a
much.
little much. And I was like, this is a no.
I had a similar ex like that too.
It's wild. What a weird, weird thing. Weird. Anywho. All right. So last but not least, we have disorganized folks. How do
Mhm.
you know when someone's disorganized?
Yeah, so disorganized, like there's features of both, kind of anxious and avoidant. And I think that's like sometimes it gets the misnomer, but like you said, it really comes from a place of anxiety. So even when someone with a disorganized attachment like gets the attention that they crave, because to their core they don't believe that they're worthy of that attention, and they don't know how to hang on to it, and they don't know how to hold space for that, and they start to feel like this person is probably going to leave me anyways. I'm going to get hurt, and so they pull away or or pull away or push the other person away, and can't really settle into a relationship, whether it's a friendship or whether it's a romantic relationship or whether it's the workplace, right? A lot of times a person with disorganized attachment will cause chaos. I'm doing air quotes because that's what they feel comfortable in, is like they can't settle into like, I know this feels safe and secure, because that feeling does not feel good to them. They don't know what to do with a feeling like that, always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And often this person kind of, I mean, you mentioned like they create this chaos. And so,
Uh-huh.
like, outside looking in, if you're not like empathetic, but outside looking in, you can say, like, of course, that person is a hot mess express. They make their life a hot mess
Uh-huh.
express.
Right.
But it's like when that's so comfortable and
Uh-huh.
that's so like, we get this idea of like normal is what we do, and anything that doesn't look like us is abnormal.
Uh-huh.
But when a person grows up in a home of chaos,
Uh-huh.
and that's all they've learned, that looks normal.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what feels normal. That's what feels safe.
Right. Yeah. Like it really does feel like, I know what to do with this. I don't know what
Yep.
to do with like anything else. I know what to do with this.
Yep. Nope. Absolutely. Yep. Depends on the day, the moment.
You don't
This
know what to
person is
expect.
gonna exactly. And like you mentioned, a lot of that is trauma based.
Uh-huh. Right. Right.
So, how do people work on being more secure? If someone chooses to work on being more secure, I think first listen and figure out where you're at. Like, I think the first step is really identifying, like, what are you most commonly? And so, don't look necessarily at, like, for example, if you're in like a great healthy relationship, that doesn't always mean that you're secure. Sometimes it means
Right.
that your partner's really secure and really
Uh-huh.
good at picking up the slack. But think about like what causes you anxiety in your connection with other people, or what, not necessarily what causes your anxiety, but what do you notice when you're interacting with other people that you're feeling internally? And
Uh-huh.
that can help guide you to understanding like which of the four types you are.
Yeah. And there's some really good resources out there. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them do focus on romantic attachments. So like there's a book called Attached with a period, that I recommend to people, but it does focus a lot on romantic relationships. So sometimes people haven't liked that take on it as much, but it is good to really be able to like read about it, look at it, see where you can see yourself. And then, also helps you like, okay, so now what do I do? And how do I become more securely attached? And honestly, and I just like love Brene Brown, and I love the power of vulnerability. And like, I really do believe like that is a source that can help you if you, are not securely attached, because of the fact that you're really able to look at the areas of your life. Like she does the 10 guideposts
Mhm.
for like wholesome living or wholeheartedness, and like it looks like, okay, so these are the things like waiting for the other shoe to drop, living in disappointment, like all the things that she talks about, like these are indicators of you not being vulnerable, and in order to be securely attached you have to be
Mhm.
comfortable with vulnerability. And so looking at, these are the places that you need to work on cultivating, play, cultivating song and dance, to really being able to like look at the areas that these are areas that I struggle with. These are things that I can do. These are the 10 guideposts. These are the things I can do to be able to become more secure. I use that resource so often because,
Mhm. It's a good one.
in order to be securely attached, you have to be emotionally vulnerable.
Mhm. Yep. Another thing to work on as well, you kind of mentioned it earlier with the story and like including like reparenting. We
Mhm.
can reparent ourselves.
Right.
And so I encourage a lot of times, especially like using like journaling exercises and things like that, to give yourself what you missed out on when, usually in childhood, whatever it was that created this anxious or avoidant or
Mhm.
disorganized attachment for you, reparent. And so that can look like providing yourself that affirmation or that love or security, and just being that kind to yourself so you can become secure within yourself first and foremost.
Right. And I think looking at your negative core beliefs, because a lot of
Good
times,
old CBT.
right, a lot of times, especially if there's trauma, or especially if you have, well, I mean, if you feel like your needs weren't met, and when you're a child and you're left with a belief of like not being enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't deserve to be loved. Really being able to identify those negative core beliefs and to be able to work on them so that you can believe I am good enough. I am worthy of love. I am deserving of love. I'm not damaged. Those things go a long way, and to be able to be securely attached, because you're not going to have a secure attachment if you inherently believe that there's something wrong with you.
Yep. And there's great like worksheets out there too. And we can link to some in the show notes that give a list of like negative core beliefs and then identifying like which of these ring true to you. Like
Right.
when you hear this, does it sit with you like that's you? And then creating the space for you to rephrase it in a way that, so instead of like thinking of, I'm unlovable or people should leave me, looking
Uh,
at instead of like, I'm worthy of love and
right.
people, are better for having me in their life. And then
Right.
working to believe those things,
Yeah.
Yeah.
EMDR could go a long way too if
True.
you have a history of trauma. And that really does help you to work on those negative core beliefs as well.
Yep. EMDR is pretty fly. There's different tools out there for it. Like there's different versions of EMDR.
Mhm.
I know you're training EMDR, I'm training
Mhm.
EMDR. It's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I just want to underscore too of just like recognizing this is an attachment pattern or attachment style, and patterns and styles can change.
Yes.
You are not broken. You may have a style or pattern that's no longer suiting you.
Right.
So
Yeah. Good point.
yeah, it's pretty decent. So any parting, I was gonna like start to wrap up, then I'm like, I didn't toss it over to you first.
Huh?
Any like parting words of wisdom?
I mean, I think your words of wisdom were great for parting. Like, it doesn't mean that because you don't have a secure attachment right now, it doesn't mean that like leave your relationship if you're in one. It doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be loved. It just means that like be aware, see how it's impacting your relationships, not just your friendships or your romantic relationships, but your friendships, your work relationships. Do you feel like you can show up in life and feel secure? So, find out how you can work on these. Like we mentioned, CBT, EMDR, reading the book attached, like really just being aware and doing some work, and you can, become a more securely attached person.
Absolutely. So your homework for us, dear listeners, or from us, is to think about times, like reflect on times in the next week where you feel secure, where you feel anxious, where you feel avoidant, and recognize if there's themes there or if something rings true to you that you may be experiencing one of these attachment styles. So
Yeah,
that's all you got to do. Just notice for
that's
right
right.
now.
Yeah.
That's all. Well, thank you so much for tuning in and listening or watching. Please remember to rate and review us if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or go ahead and subscribe and hit that thumbs up if you are watching us on YouTube. It also greatly helps if you share our
Mhm.
posts, share our episodes. It helps more people find us and learn some wise wisdom that we hope that you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, so much, and have a great week. And we'll pick this up next week.